So I think this is it, Shaun. I think this is it. This is the moment when it all changes for us.
Wow. What, for the better or the other way?
No one said for the better.
Okay.
To be very clear, no one said for the better, but this is the day that video killed the radio star's eyes.
Hey.
You're listening to Double Tap, your daily accessible technology show. Now, here's your hosts, Stephen Scott and Shaun Preece.
Hey, Shaun Preece. Welcome to another show. Welcome to Tuesday. How are you?
Oh, just intro it like that. Like it's just another show, Stephen Scott.
Well, it is.
I've switched my camera on. I don't know where I'm looking. No idea. But hey, how are you?
I'm all right. I'm absolutely fine. Hello to YouTube. Hello to all of you on YouTube if you're watching us for the very first time, wondering what on earth this is. Okay, so here's how it works, right? Here on Double Tap, we like to just, ruminate about the day. We like to talk about various things, including possibly sausages and cheese and a combination of both. And occasionally, we will talk about tech.
Don't put people off. This is a tech show.
Summarizes it?
This is a tech show, honestly.
Honest.
Yes.
Yeah. Listen, how was your weekend? It was a long weekend because, of course, Labor Day.
Yes, it was. Did you do any?
I'm a big fan of Labor Day. I'm all about Labor Day.
Yes, I'm sure. Did you do any labor?
I did no labor whatsoever. Is that? I think that's the kind of irony of Labor Day, isn't it?
You know what I did? I liked it because it gave me time to have a play. I used the Seeing AI Find My feature in real life, not just playing around with it. I actually used it. And do you know what? It was fantastic.
So I heard you on with our good friend Jacob over on AMI Today, which is another great show you should be checking out, by the way. AMI Today, which we feature on. That's not why it's brilliant, but, we are there.
Yeah.
And you were talking to Jacob about this because you were promoting the show that day, and we were talking about this amazing feature that Brian did for us last week. And we were talking about the fact that, this feature, which has actually been around for a while, we don't know how long, because it's kind of so for people who don't know Seeing AI, or if you do know Seeing AI, you may be aware that there's channels in there, lots of different channels, lots of different functionalities, like, short text. So you can just literally hold your phone up and it'll read whatever the phone sees in front of it. Great, for example, when I was in the hospital that day, or in the hotel the other week, and, I was walking around and I was able to find my room, which was actually, and I mentioned this last week, but I've got to say it again. I've got to say this, the fact that it can now read arrows makes a big difference, because before, when it said exit and there were 3 ways to go, I was struggling.
Yeah. No, it's
so
fantastic.
Now it can read arrows.
For things like that, it's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's brilliant. And Seeing AI from Microsoft, an amazing app, of course. But yeah, this Find My feature, which is kind of buried in the World channel, it's only, as we mentioned last week, it's only on iOS.
Currently, yes.
But they're getting there. They are getting there with the Android version, I guess. They'll be building that up. But it's available on iOS, and it is inside the World channel. Once you get there, you swipe left from if you're using VoiceOver, you'll swipe left and you'll get to the Find My function. So this allows you to identify objects that you've, let's just say, not lost.
Yeah, that's right. Well, this is...
You have not, because if you lose it first, you're going to have a problem.
You're out of luck. Yes, you do.
You can't find it after that.
You do need to basically scan or list the objects in there beforehand. And this isn't the first time we've seen a feature or a function like this, right? There's been apps out there before. But, it's just another great reason to use Seeing AI. It's the toolkit. It's got everything in it. So, yeah, I scanned my object, which, by the way, was really easy. And go back to your podcast app and search for Double Tap, you'll be able to hear a demo of Brian using this and setting it up. It's so easy, so quick. So I did the usual thing. I was cleaning the kitchen tops and I swiped something completely off. I don't know what it was, but I just swiped it off. And then...
did it go bonk?
It did go bonk.
Smash?
And then I was trying to figure out, is that a cup or something else? And it was something else that I had just before added to Find My and Seeing AI. So I did the usual thing. I took my flip-flops off and I swept around with my feet trying to find it. Could not find it. I thought...
That's the OG blind locator.
Of course, your big toe, and then pick it up with your feet if you're a certain age as well. But
I'm long past that, let me tell you. I'm barely able to bend over to pick it up. Never mind,
that's what I mean.
Feet to pick it up.
You grab it with your feet. But, I went to the Sing AI app and I double tapped on Find My, and it was in the list. And I just swept the phone around for a couple of seconds and it started to beep and I found it straight away. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because we talk about these features all the time, and it's always like, oh, have you seen this? Let's set this up and sort of play with it. But when you actually need to do something in real life, when you actually use a feature for what it's intended to, you actually see if it does work well or not, don't you? You know what I mean?
Is this like my Braille conversation again, where it's like, do you know what, for years I'm like, Braille, I mean, who uses it? Who cares about Braille? No, suddenly I start reading Braille and I'm like, this is amazing. Why have I not been using this? This is great. Like, everybody should be using it. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, who knew? Yeah, but it works really well.
A new segment coming soon. I don't think it's a new segment coming soon. I think it's just going to be a part of the fabric of this program. We're going to be just talking about things all along that go, who knew?
Well, like you said,
such amazing things.
I didn't even know that feature was in there, because I just go to my usually it's a short text I use in Sing AI. But basically what I'm saying is thank you, Brian.
What are you saying?
It was fantastic. A good feature.
Yes, thank you, Brian. So coming up today, we are going to be talking to Brian Bashan, Vice Chair of Be My Eyes, also Hans Weiberg, the founder of Be My Eyes. They're both joining us on our show, I know, to talk all about AppleVis. Now, you might have heard, of course, the news that AppleVis has been saved by the wonderful guys at Be My Eyes. And we're going to talk to Brian and Hans about that decision and get some of your questions on, because we did ask you last week on the podcast and on AMI Audio to send in your questions in advance. Some of you have done that. We'll put those questions, a lot of very similar thread questions. So I've put them together and we'll ask Brian and Hans those questions a little bit later. But, I got an email in last week to the show. And we get emails, we get voicemails, we get all kinds of communications from you guys all the time. And I'm saying this, of course, to our new viewers on YouTube and to those of you who are new to the show as well. And this question came at a really almost perfect time for today's program. And this is from Larry, who's left us this voice message.
Hello, Stephen Scott. This is Larry Chase calling you from the United States in Connecticut on the East Coast. There is no Connecticut on the West Coast. But anyway, thank you. It's a good show. And I picked up your trail on the Hadley Tech with the Tech podcast with Ricky Enger.
Yes,
very good show and a marvelous piece of live video feedback of your touring around London, the London Bridge, Big Ben. All of that was exhilarating, and I hope it comes down to me soon. I would look forward to that. On AppleVis, I have nothing to say to those folks, to those volunteers at AppleVis, but thank you. I've heard on your podcast and others, a lot of people going round and round about how it could be made better. The point is, there was really not a lot of money. You could belong to Apple Club and donate, and I am sure that many people did that, but probably not enough to pay people their worth and their value. I got enormous value over the past 14 years. I know in large part many things about my iPhone that I would not have known otherwise. And that's where the thank you comes, both to David, Thomas Domville, and all the other good folks who donated their time over 14 years.
Yeah.
It's a good show. I don't understand what accessible media is. I understand that the podcast must be a distillation of your programs on the air. I wonder what air that is. Is it a form of BBC? I'm not sure what it is. I came in through the Hadley Gate and not from listening locally in Great Britain to your program. So it would be a help at some point for folks like me who have not heard you in your first generation of broadcast, where the content originates and what it was made for. But the podcast is good, a good skim of what's going on out there in technology. Very helpful. It's in my podcast catcher app, Downcast on the iPhone. Mm-hmm. And it's quite good, quite listenable. What is whinging? We don't have that stateside. Negative Julian is a hoot. You should have him on more often. I very much enjoy him. A quite articulate fellow. I enjoy listening to him and to you guys. Thanks for your time. It's a good effort. You have a new subscriber in me. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Oh, thank you, Larry. That's a wonderful message to get. And I'm not going to lie, I held that back for today because I thought, what a great voice message to get and what a perfect time to air it on our first day on YouTube as well. Because lots of people, Shaun, are going to be coming to the show who've never heard of us before. And some people will be saying, what on earth is this?
Yeah,
and we'll get a lot of that. I imagine we'll get a lot of
years.
that.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, our regular listeners ask that every day. So you've just joined the What on Earth is This club. And this is Double Tap. So a little bit of history for those who are new to the show. Double Tap is the daily tech podcast where we occasionally talk tech. And we talk about our lives. We talk about, how we use tech as two blind guys. Shaun, if you don't mind me saying, you have RP. You can explain that for people who don't know what RP is.
RP is a degenerative.
Do you know?
Yeah, of course I know. It's just no one's asked me to describe it in a long time.
Wow. Okay.
Yes, so I've got X-linked RP, which means it affects the males, and I lose the peripheral vision first, night blindness, peripheral vision, and generally that just gets smaller and smaller, and the tunnel vision gets smaller and smaller. I'm at the stage now where I've got no usable vision whatsoever.
Yeah.
Wow,
and,
that's cheery.
It's reality, right? I mean, that's what it is. I mean, it's funny because growing up, that's what I always heard it known as. I was never heard of RP, but I heard of tunnel vision, and that I think is a great way to describe it to people because it kind of makes sense. You're literally looking through that tunnel. But as you say, that it's what I didn't know at the time was that it was degenerative, that it would, gradually that hole gets smaller and smaller, right? And ultimately then you end up with no vision or no usable vision.
It can go the other way as well. You can lose this center vision and it can, get worse as it goes out. So there's two different ways it can go. But it's you know what? I'm actually okay with it.
Yeah, well, that's another thing. When we talk about this, we actually do get into this topic of how we cope with this every day. I hear a lot of people talk about suffering from, and some people don't like that. And I get that, and I understand why. And I think that the key thing, the key message that I think we want to get across here on Double Tap when we talk about our lives with this is that these are our opinions. These are our viewpoints from our perspectives. We cannot speak for everybody. And we will not speak for everybody. And that's exactly why we have a call-in line. We have emails. We have, lots of communication. WhatsApp coming soon. I'll talk about that. But, the point is that I want everybody to have their say, to give their view, to give us their unique perspectives. We've learned so much. I've learned a lot about this world. You can't know everything, even about your own condition, because it depends on who you are. I mean, I've met so many people with retinitis pigmentosa over the years, all at different stages. And each of them have a very different outlook on life. Now, granted, we may all be heading in the same direction, but we're all at different stops on the bus, right? We're not all getting off at the same place. We're not even getting on at the same place.
No, that's right.
In some cases.
And we've been talking together, Stephen, for years and years and years. Some on air, some not, but we've been talking for years and years and years. And, our opinions have changed. Our experiences have changed over those years, depending on where we were and the amount of vision that we had. There was
the amount of flip-flopping I've done is more than you do in your kitchen when you're looking for something. I have jumped around all over the place. I'm like a clown in a minefield, diving around, with opinions, because I dependent on where you are at different points of your life, you will change your view on things. And this is something which I think on the internet might be surprising because it doesn't seem many people do that anymore. It's a case of I have an opinion and that's my opinion and you cannot tell me otherwise. Well, you don't get that on Double Tap. We will challenge you. We will challenge ourselves. That's what we do. And thanks for asking about my condition. So I've got optic nerve hypoplasia. But basically what that means is that my optic nerve was never developed properly, which essentially means that the eyes, I think, are okay. I don't really know, and no one can really tell me. No one really knows the answer to this.
That's why I never asked you.
If you can't, there's nothing wrong with me, that's right. But, if you can't plug the eyes into anything to see if they actually work, you don't know if they're any good or not. So even if the optic nerve was fixed, there's no guarantee that anything would be there worth, looking through either. So I don't know, because I do have nystagmus in my eyes as well. So essentially that is a constant movement. Imagine if your eyes were darting back and forward at a rate of 75 miles an hour. I often say to people, the best way to do it is just throw your head left and right a number of times until you're dizzy, then keep spinning for about a week.
That's nice.
What nystagmus is like. Because I remember when it's so funny, because again, it's that thing of you got nystagmus. My wife ended up with nystagmus, and both of you said to me, this is terrible. And I'm like, I know.
It's like an episode of Star Trek when they're under attack and they get shaken around in the chair. It's exactly what it's like. It's like someone's shaking the camera. Yeah.
So, yeah, Double Tap came along because, Sean and I were doing a show out of the UK for a long time called Tech Talk, which is still going from RNIB. And some great guys are continuing to run that show and make that happen every week, which is brilliant. And a big shout out to them.
Yeah.
RNIB, I was working there for 15 years and I had great opportunities to develop. And one of the opportunities I had was to develop this show called Tech Talk. And then I met the guys from AMI, Accessible Media, and they said, hey, we want to do this. And I said, are you crazy? And they said, yes. So we did it. And Double Tap was born. And here we are. And, Double Tap was started off weekly. And then Sean and I realized that it wasn't enough. So we decided to do some more work, which is very unlike us.
Yeah, well, and, we were talking every day anyway, right?
That's right.
And it's just a case, you know what? Let's just hit record.
Yeah, these shows, you can sometimes tell, right, when you've got people who are on a show and they don't speak to each other off air. Someone will say something like, and then someone will go, I didn't know you had kids, that kind of thing. And it's like, really? Do you two never speak at all about anything? We literally talk. I mean, I make a joke, there's a 24-hour conversation between Sean and I. You get to hear an hour of it.
Yeah, it's true, though.
And I think that's probably true. And, we met, and the interesting thing was this is how we met. We met because I heard you on a different podcast. You were talking about Windows 10, and you made it funny. Which, there's lots of things you could laugh at with Windows 10, but you made particular things funny.
Installing Windows 10. Yeah, that was a tricky one.
Yeah, that's right. And it was funny, and I laughed, and I said, I've got to meet this guy. And then when we met, you and I talked about the white cane, and both of us were kind of at the same place with the white cane. I didn't want to use mine, and if I did use it, I wanted to use it as far away from other people as humanly possible that I knew.
Not near my neighbours. Hide that white stick away. Yes.
Like I would get to the top of my street, and I'd put the cane in my bag and then walk to my door. Why? I don't know. I'd struggled to do that last walk because I felt if they see me. And, the thing was, when I started using it, everybody said the same thing, which was, we kind of noticed, you had problems.
Yeah, we knew anyway.
When you kept trying to get in the wrong house.
I've done that
kind of thing.
I've done that.
Yeah. So, for that reason, we kind of connected, and that's how we met. And, well, been mates ever since, quite frankly. And it's just been, this is an absolute joy to do this, to be perfectly honest. The fact we get to do this, and AMI allow us to do this is just incredible. So AMI is a channel, a mandated government channel. Well, I say mandated by the government. The AMI itself is not mandated, but the channel is mandated to exist in Canada to enable the voices of disabled people to be heard. There's actually 3 channels AMI has. They have AMI Audio, which is what we're on. Hello. Then we've also got AMI TV and AMI Télé, which is French-Canadian. And we also have a show over there on AMI TV called Access Tech Live, which returns this week on AMI TV. Thursdays, 12 noon Eastern, competing on this slot. Whose idea? I don't know. But anyway. So
this is ridiculous.
We are competing with myself. But, you've got the TV network, you've got the 2 TV networks, actually, and you've got the radio network as well. And these are mandated government access services. It is a unique thing in Canada, and it is incredible that it exists. And everybody I speak to outside of Canada says the same thing. Why is this not available around the world? Why is this not a thing everywhere?
No, it should be.
And I don't know why.
It should be.
I don't know why. It blows my mind. But look, I tell you what, I could talk all day about AMI. I'm going to let them speak for themselves.
What is communication? It's the way we share our thoughts, our opinions, our culture. From what we see on TV to what we post online, communication is the representation of who we are. But what about those who aren't being seen or heard? At AMI, we strive to be a voice for Canadians with disabilities through positive portrayal, reflection, and accessible media. We believe everyone should be included. AMI TV is inclusion. Experience now on amiplus.ca.
Yeah, fantastic. Go check out amiplus.ca. And if you're in Canada, of course, you can get the app as well. Available now on Roku TVs. So if you have a Roku TV stick, or box, or they've got that stream bar as well. I've always been intrigued by that. It's like a streaming, what do they call it, like a sound bar?
You've painted yourself into a corner
here. Not work out what that was called. Sound bar. They have the Roku built into that, which is kind of cool.
Yes, and on some TVs, Roku is built in as well.
Yeah, that's right. So you can get that on TV, as I say, on those various devices, and you can get AMI Plus on there as well. I'm very proud to be part of this. I really am. And we're just been renewed for the new season. That's not why we're saying that. Although we are very thankful to the great Mr. F. You'll hear his name.
Mr. F.
You'll hear his name quite a lot over the next while. He is the big boss man, the big scary boss man, who's often found in a corner slumped because I believe directly because of this program.
Yes, and not because of the bottles of whiskey. No, it's all fine.
Yeah.
Wow. God bless you, Mr. F.
Listen, we are going to touch on a little bit of tech news today, in amongst all our kind of celebrations and patting ourselves on the back. I want to mention this Amazon story because, of course, it's quite interesting. I don't know if you've been following this, but of course, the news. I know you and I have been talking about it. This Amazon Echo news that it's going to get this upsurge in capability through using the latest AI. This is going to be rolling out. We talked about this last week, and I said to you it's going to be a subscription service based on some reports that were coming in. And now we're getting a sense of what that subscription will be. It will be between $5 and $10 US. It will not be part of a Prime member benefit scheme, so it will not be part of Amazon Prime, apparently. Again, we don't know details, but this is the rumor. And also, it's not going to be using its own AI. It will be sort of piggybacking on Claude AI, which is actually very good. I don't know if you've used Claude as opposed to OpenAI's GPT or anything else.
It's hard to tell, right? It depends. There are app specifics like ChatGPT app itself, but there's lots of apps out there like Chat AI that you don't know what actually it's using. It could be using Claude. So I don't know if I've used it specifically. It's not one that I'd really say that I've played with, exclusively on its own.
I hear a lot of good things about it. And I tried it myself. I mean, I found it good. I mean, I think the only issue with some of these other models is they don't have quite the access to current information. A lot of them tend to work off more historical. They have maybe a library that starts from 2021 and goes backwards, or ends, I should say, 2021, and then goes backwards in time. So, great for historical references, great for all that, but maybe not so good for current events. That's where ChatGPT is obviously connected to Microsoft, through Bing. They've got the pipe to the internet pretty much sewn up there. I've
been using Copilot recently just to play with it again. There's a few accessibility issues. I'm talking about on Windows here, specifically Windows 11. But generally, it is a nice thing just to have, built into your copy of Windows, right? But I've heard great things about Claude as well. I've used it, I think, on PickyBot, the app, which is very good for getting description.
Is that what it runs?
Yeah, you can choose. In PickyBot, the app, you can choose what AI service to use. So you can test all these out. You can test out Meta's Llama, ChatGPT, Claude, and there's others. I can't remember them all. It's very good for testing that out. But I don't know. I mean, I'm getting concerned about Amazon. Aren't you? Because this almost seems like, okay, we tried to do it ourselves and we're not. We're going to outsource it. Now, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I mean, that's exactly what Apple are doing as well. They do have their own Apple Intelligence for running on device, but they also have the ChatGPT. Microsoft, they're running ChatGPT. So there's nothing wrong with outsourcing a service to a better one. But I don't know. Amazon concerns me. I'm just not sure how this will work. Will there be two tiers? If someone doesn't want to subscribe and they don't pay, how's their smart speaker going to work? As it is now, then it's going to be left behind, surely.
Yeah, well, we shall see. I must admit, it does feel like everyone's going down the OpenAI route, and it seems that it's growing.
Well, there's a reason
capability.
for that.
One or at least one or two have to win, right? We can't just have endless amounts of these. So, it does feel like one or two will win. It's VHS versus Betamax again, to some degree. Okay, we're going to follow this story with interest. We'll talk more about it in the coming days, of course, as the rumors continue. And of course, we're heading towards, I guess, an October event, because that's what everything seems to be pointing to.
Yep.
There's even talk of perhaps a requirement for new hardware as well for this to work. I said this. But anyway, let's move on.
Ooh.
And let's talk all about AppleVis. We'll get to that in just a moment. We've got Brian Bashan and Hans Weiberg joining us in just a sec. But first, if you want to get involved in the show, this is how you do it.
Call the Double Tappers now, 1-877-803-4567, or email us, feedback@doubletaponair.com.
So let's talk, Shaun, about the big story of last week, of course. The news that AppleVis has been saved. I can do my Reverend Lovejoy voice again, can I? I want to do it again. AppleVis has been saved.
It's so terrible that.
I think
For
that's
such
good.
amazing, breaking, great news, you really spoil it.
Oh, thanks. Okay, well, look, I do try. I mean, I'm certainly trying. Anyway, okay, let's bring on two people who I know desperately want to talk about this, and that is, of course, two guys from Be My Eyes, the company behind the saviour of AppleVis. Let me bring in first Vice Chair of Be My Eyes, Brian Bashan. Welcome to Double Tap, Brian.
Hey, great to be with you guys.
And Hans-Jürgen Weiberg, original founder, one of the co-founders of Be My Eyes. You and I have spoken many a time, Hans, over the years. Welcome back to Double Tap.
Thank you so much.
Why did Be My Eyes step in here? Because that, I guess, is one of the big questions a lot of the community has. Why and how did Be My Eyes get involved in all this?
Sure. Well, I'm a blind guy myself, and when I needed go-to about iPhones or iOS or whatever for maybe a dozen years, I've got to AppleVis. It's the go-to source. And so like I don't know, thousands of people, it was like a gut punch when we realized that it couldn't continue. And almost immediately I went to the Be My Eyes leadership, as did Hans, and we said, this is really important. We've got to figure out some way that we can work to save it. And we thought a consortium, some others. We actually talked to some other groups, and nobody was really prepared to. Everybody was similarly disappointed that this amazing resource couldn't continue. But nobody was able to step up to the plate. And we said, we've got to do it. And we were able to, we have some resources, not a lot, but we have some. And we thought this is exactly coincident with the Be My Eyes brand. You know, our brand, we don't charge users for anything about access. Neither does AppleVis. We're independent of politics and everything else. We're straight shooters. So is AppleVis. And we have a mission to grow our community so that more blind people throughout the world and global south will use our access products, and so does AppleVis. So we got consensus from our leadership, and here we are.
Wow. How easy was it to get that okay, let's go ahead with this from the other people at Be My Eyes? Because as a blind person, you obviously recognize it. And another question I want to ask is why? What do you think it is that makes AppleVis the go-to place when there is so many other great resources in the community?
I'll take the first one. You know, Be My Eyes is a company that has a very significant blind leadership component to it. So basically, imagine this. People listen to Hans as founder and as sort of our anchor.
Sometimes they do.
And we realized this was an opportunity to bring together a community that was a little fragmented. And that brings me to the second point, which is AppleVis, unlike almost any other technology, if you're an Android user, you could go to dozens of places and get a sort of mildly unsatisfying experience in all of them. But with AppleVis, you know that if you search AppleVis for some problem you're having and it's not there somewhere, there's probably not a solution to it right now. And if you submit a bug or whatever, you know that at least it's going to be considered. And that's a really important thing to have a sort of the authoritative source of people who've devoted, unprecedented amount of hours of their day and week and month and year to keeping the site running, all as volunteers. I just don't know anything like that.
And it's funny because when I think about the connection between the two, at first I had to think about it and I felt like I was, trying to push a square thing into a round hole. But actually it doesn't. It actually makes sense when you think about it. I mean, especially from that voluntary component, which of course is at the heart, Hans, of what you started with Be My Eyes, right? I mean, when this whole thing started, it was about bringing volunteers together with blind people to help support. And this kind of takes it to the next level, which is blind volunteers helping other blind people.
Exactly. And we, from the very beginning, we knew before, but we also absolutely felt that our missions are so aligned, and we are not doing the exact same thing, but as you said, there is a great deal of volunteering in both, and we know what it takes to run something with a lot of volunteers, and we felt that we could add something to this. And I, as a blind person myself, I have been using AppleVis, so I was really shocked and saying we got to do something. And I was very happy and also proud that AppleVis is willing to work with Be My Eyes on this and basically hand it over to us to run it. And we will be super respectful of what they are doing and what they have been doing, and we will be learning a lot from those guys, and hopefully it will also shine a little bit back on Be My Eyes and so on. And down the line, I think we can maybe implement AppleVis into Be My Eyes and so on in a more. So it's basic, not that AppleVis should kind of change in any way, but we just want to make it easier for a blind person to access AppleVis, maybe directly from the Be My Eyes app. But we also know that a lot of O&M trainers and instructors globally, they are using AppleVis as a resource, and maybe they are not using Be My Eye, so they should absolutely have access to just go into AppleVis as they have been doing all the time. So it's really a benefit, I hope, for AppleVis, but also for Be My Eyes as such.
What would you say, just to reinforce the fact that anyone may have concerns about, AppleVis changing? I know you did mention there that it's not going to change, but, obviously people are going to be concerned, but because of the community aspect of AppleVis, the way it's always been, supporting each other, volunteering each other's time or your own time, you've got no plans at all to make any changes. People shouldn't have any concerns about AppleVis sort of changing or morphing into something else.
No, we don't have any plans for changing. I hope that AppleVis will develop as it would have been doing without Be My Eyes. So there might be some changes down the road, but we are not going to enforce any changes or anything. We will, as our CEO Mike Barkley has said, we will sit back and listen for quite a while, and then together with the editor team at AppleVis, we will talk about how to improve, and I think there will be kind of a corner of AppleVis where you can suggest changes and so on, and then we will be looking closely on that. But we don't have any hidden plans to change everything or anything at all. So yeah.
And I underscore that as a former journalist myself, editorial independence is one of the pillars that we agreed to mutually. We don't want to muck around with things when AppleVis has been the expert. They know what they're doing. They've produced an outstanding product and community. We're going to learn from them on this, and they're going to tell us what they need. And that's how the relationship must go forward, because they have something pure and beautiful there. We don't want to, saunder it by commercial stuff or other stuff. We may link our sites together. People on our Be My Eyes app may have a really quick way to get to AppleVis. Why is that important? Well, we know for a fact that the great majority of our users in North America and Europe are using iOS to access Be My Eyes. So that's one of the things that's in our interest. We want those users to have access to the world's great library of tips and tricks, and that's AppleVis.
I want to, there's so much to unpack with this, and there are a lot of questions our audience have, and we'll get to those in a moment. But I want to ask you, Brian, about the sort of governance of all of this, how this will actually work in reality. Because reading into the press release from Be My Eyes and then the statements and follows up on AppleVis, it seems that you are going to be the one who's kind of leading the charge here. But there will be people employed as well with volunteers. So what is that structure looking like?
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. Exactly the same people will be in charge of, say, moderation and administration as before, with the absence of David Goodwin, the saintly David Goodwin who built all of this. And I am the person on the Be My Eyes side that, in any organization, who's that single point of contact? Well, it'll be me. And so I understand the principles really well. Now, we are going to compensate the top couple of people now. They were, after years or decades of service, they'll be slightly compensated for their service just because we think it's the right thing to do, and it will bind the two organizations together. That's all. It's not a complex administrative change at all.
But of course, one area which, and David Goodwin talked about this in his final post on AppleVis, when he had made the decision it was time to go and indeed to close the site. Of course, now it's been saved, which is fantastic. But at that point, he talked about the trolling on the website, the challenges he was facing with negative comments. And he did use that word trolling. Do you have any concern about this? Do you have any concern about taking this on and having to deal with this? I mean, is this an Elon Musk Twitter moment? You know, I'm not expecting you're going to start carrying kitchen sinks around. I'm just thinking, you know, that you're, you know, maybe getting into this world where, you know, a company like yourselves, you have a very good image in the blind community. Does taking on something like this, which brings in this sort of outside influence and, you know, outside comment, does that concern you?
Well, I will say that when you have 675,000 blind users already on Be My Eyes, we've had a few people do a few things over the years, so we know about this. And guess what? If you have a really vital living tissue, which is a social media platform, there will be people who will be the same people as everywhere else. Maybe this betokens blind equality here or something. But having said that, we want the site to be respectful. We don't want any of the things, hate speech, awful personal attack, all that kind of stuff. We will not countenance. There may be some tools that we can use to help perhaps be a little stronger moderation. But even within the AppleVis team, there's some thought that we want this to, we're not afraid of a little back and forth. We don't want to be, you know, your nanny state. We don't want to sort of suppress really vital opinions sometimes. So it's like everything else. It's sort of a balance between the two. But our bottom line is we have to have the respectful conversations, or it's not going to be worth it.
Reassure
also,
a lot of people.
It's you don't have to. Just sarcasm can be really scaring people away from being in a otherwise good conversation on an app or something like that. So I think it is fair that we educate people a little bit, and also mute some people who doesn't contribute to a good environment, because people come to AppleVis when they really need some advice, and you don't want to go into some kind of a dogfight and so on. So I also realized that I have myself been super frustrated, and that has to get out somewhere. But AppleVis is not the place to kind of offload your frustrations. But I also totally get that sometimes it can be a place where you feel that you are being listened to and so on. So it's not an easy thing to moderate, but we will be backing up whatever AppleVis is doing, and hopefully we can share some of our experiences and so on. Absolutely.
That's good to hear. Can I just point out, in case you didn't know, that Stephen was banished from AppleVis at one point?
I was.
Just want to say, you may want to keep an eye on
that
him.
one. So yeah.
Oh, thanks.
So,
Right. Okay, so I've been banned, though.
Can I ask? Can I ask?
I'm going to start Android Viz then. Android Viz coming soon.
Can I just ask on that note, actually, because recently, well, fairly recently, AppleVis introduced other areas to AppleVis, such as Windows and other devices as well. Is that going to continue, or are you going to narrow it back down just to Apple devices?
Mm-hmm. We're going to listen carefully to the editorial team. They're the experts there. But I will say, with what we've heard recently, is that there's been quite a lot of interest in those areas, and the metrics were pretty strong there. So they know the field, and they know what is hot. And in tech, you can't just keep everything the same. And as things emerge, we can talk about AI in a minute. That's a whole new universe of things that we might want to consider as well. That whole suite of privacy and all of that. So we at Be My Eyes are not going to really be making editorial decisions around this. We'll let the same team do what they've done so brilliantly over the years.
We've been getting a lot of questions ahead of the interview. I asked people to get in touch and share their questions for you. And one question we've got in from Greg, he asks, is Be My Eyes a profit or non-profit company? Let me ask you that part first. It's a two-part question.
We're for-profit.
Okay.
We are not a nonprofit. However, as we get further into this, there are some enterprises that might benefit from being associated with a nonprofit arm. A number of other companies do exactly this. So although we've taken no action yet, it is something we might want to consider in the future.
Now, Greg goes on to ask in that question, what does this teach us about funding models going forward? We tend to think about this kind of world as being a little bit not-for-profit, right? But of course, we're now starting to see for-profit companies. Of course, we've seen it through assistive tech for many years, and rightly so. But, we're starting to see it in this area now as well, where resources like this that were very much community-focused, that were volunteer-driven, suddenly become potentially, they can make money. This could be monetized. And that seems to be where a lot of us are kind of, especially we've been saying on the show last week, it's been really interesting because it kind of looks like there's like a new way of us seeing value in ourselves as blind people, value in our content, value in our products that we go out there and create.
Yeah, and we better damn be paid for what we know and our lived experience and our expertise. This is a big tenet of ours. And when we go to large numbers of companies that have joined us for accessible customer service, yeah, you bet they pay us for it. We invented this. We have the community that benefits from it, and they should pay as they increase the accessibility of their offerings.
Now, Greg also asked, and this can go to both of you, I think this is a great question, with Microsoft being involved in funding, well, not funding, but necessarily paying for being part of Be My Eyes, and of course the Disability Answer Desk is available through Be My Eyes and all of that stuff. Despite them having their own app and their own way of communicating, they work with you guys. Does it open the door for Apple to come in and potentially fund? So in some way, actually fund AppleVis, kind of in a strange way. Is that something you would consider? Would you even think about
great.
That? Yeah.
If you can squeeze some dollars out of Apple. No, with all respect, AppleVis has a great relation with Apple. So do Be My Eyes, and I'm sure we will be in dialogue with Apple. I know Mike has been talking to them already. Nothing has come out of that. But they are very happy that we are having this partnership with AppleVis. So that part of it is absolutely great. Speaking of Microsoft, Microsoft was our first customer, and the partnership we have with Microsoft, Google, Spotify, LinkedIn, and all the other companies. That is why we can keep Be My Eyes as a free service. So all respect to those companies that they want to partner with us and also pay. But because you could say, okay, blind people, they can just call us. We don't need Be My Eyes. But they recognize that Be My Eyes is an app made for blind people by blind people, and it is easy to use, and that is how you easily can connect with different companies and so on. And that is one of the reasons why these companies want to pay us a monthly subscription so we can keep the whole thing running and support their customers as well in an accessible way.
Can I ask, we had a question as well asking what Be My Eyes yourselves get out of this, and I think you've kind of answered that already. But I want to ask, is any of the information, that database, that decades database, is any of that information going to be used or could be used as part of Be My AI or anything to do with AI for that matter?
You've put your finger on something that's very exciting to all of us, which is think of those thousands of podcasts and forum posts and all of that. If we can incorporate all of that, including the full text of the podcast, into an AI searchable, queryable system, so that A, if you knew of some obscure problem, you could find it quickly, and B, you could find it quickly in, say, 40 languages that the AI will speak. So if you're in Brazil and you only speak Portuguese, for the first time, you'll be able to use all the content in AppleVis and read it relatively well translated. This excites me a lot.
Yeah, me too.
This is where I'm so excited about this as well, and but I have also learned from my tech team that hold your horses.
Calm down, Brian.
But I really hope that we can do this. And I'm from Denmark, and as you can hear, English is not my first language. But I know a lot of blind people in Denmark and many other countries also use AppleVis, but only those who speak English, of course. So if we can dramatically expand the user base by making it somewhat AI accessible language-wise, that would be so amazing, because so many more people would be able to find answers, and if we can translate them, then you can look at it and you can go into settings and find how what the rotor means and how to use it and so on. In a lot of countries, there is not a support system like we have in the UK and Denmark and US and so on. In many places in Africa and so on, you have to look a long way to find an O&M instructor and so on, and have skilled people to teach you how to use technology. So we blind people, we absolutely need to teach each other. And down the line, I hope that we can have online teaching of blind people and connect people who are good on AppleVis, because then they can also explain one-on-one and so on. But that is something I dream about, that we can do it down the line.
Wow. I mean, I'm envisaging now all the things that must be running through your minds about what you can do with this, and how, you know, it really does actually tie into, in my mind, what Be My Eyes is all about. It really does, because everything just ties back to just that phrase itself. I do have a question, which we've had in a few of these, or a few questions kind of around the similar vein, which I've got to ask you about, but while I've got you here, which is around Be My Eyes and Be My AI coming to wearables. Is that something we're going to see anytime soon, guys?
We know that if you can have a wearable, you can have two hands to do whatever you're doing. And that means more access in the world, access while walking around. It just is a multiplier on the effectiveness of blind people. So what I can say is that we have been working with several manufacturers of wearables and exploring that. And we see a future that's bright with wearables. And we recognize that the ability to have AI, and for that matter, 7.5 million volunteers, as you're going through space and acting on the world instead of being acted upon. This is where the future is going for blind folks and for sighted folks.
I could almost, it almost sounds like you've been asked that question before.
and I've also answered it the same way before.
I'm now reading from a pre-prepared statement.
So no timeline on this then? Nothing you can just, a little exclusive maybe?
It's our first day on YouTube. Come on, give us something.
Watch this space, and we will be delighted to talk with Double Tap when we have something to announce.
Okay, all right.
Thank you. We'll let it go.
Hans, when you think back to the beginnings of Be My Eyes and you think where you began, did you ever think that you'd be at this level, where you'd be, at least internationally, at this level, where, you know, you're now working with this amazing team of people, and now you've acquired this amazing website, which, you know, as we know from the emails we got here at Double Tap, the amount of people who were so saddened by the announcement of the closure, of course, very considerate of David Goodwin's position, but really sad at the loss, now, of course, brought back to life by a company you founded. How does that feel?
Well, it's almost unbelievable. We have kind of gotten used to that. We have a lot of volunteers and so on, but being able to kind of expand with other kind of making the world accessible. And AppleVis is part of the reason why people can use Be My Eyes, because they learn to use their devices on AppleVis, and then they can actually use Be My Eyes, and that is it makes totally sense. But I had hoped that AppleVis could have continued, but I totally get that. This is a huge task to take on, and Goodwin has been doing this for 14 years without getting a penny for it, which is totally amazing. And I know he has had a team around it, but as I understand, he has really been the person in charge, and also being the person who everything fell back on, keeping the site up and so on, has been a tremendous job that he has been doing for so many years. And I'm blown away when I got to learn about how much work he has put into this in so many years to benefit the whole community. So for me and for Be My Eyes to get the honor of taking on this is absolutely amazing. And I had not imagined that we would kind of expand in this way. I know you're a little disappointed that we have not acquired anything since yesterday, but
I am, yes.
But I'm still working on this one, so yeah.
Listen, speaking of news, of course, the big story is going to be next week when we get the Apple event and we find out what's new from Apple. And, you know, one thing we're really pleased about is that AppleVis will be there to allow us to find out about all the bugs in iOS 18 and what's going on with macOS Sequoia and all of that. So that is fantastic news. The site will be there. The archive will be there. We'll all be able to start posting again. And I think you're going to see a huge upsurge of interest in this, and a huge appreciation to you guys for what you're doing, but also to David for what he built as well. And we must remember that. I just want to ask before you go, any expectations from you guys about next week? What are you looking for? Is it new iPhones? Is it, you know, better AirPods? What are you hoping for from the Apple event, Brian?
Well, because we are married to AI, of course, we want to learn about the usability of Apple Intelligence. How much is being developed? When will it finally be deployed? Which handsets will actually do a good job with it? Should we wait until 17? All these questions, because AI is the future in so many things, but we in the blind community have to be critical of it. What's the UX like? What are the dangers of it? Many of the assumptions that may go into Apple Intelligence may or may not be wonderful for the blind community. So we're going to look at that with a hard eye, and we know just the team to look at it. So, you know, what I've heard from so many is, oh my God, we're going to go through the next September 9th thing. How could we do that without AppleVis? So we're delighted that they'll be up and running by then.
I'm really expecting that Siri will be better at understanding what I'm telling it. Yesterday you spoke about on the program that it's strangely enough, you can hardly dictate voiceover. It will just say voice, which is,
Yes.
I mean, that's really strange. And when you're using other dictation platforms, it can easily say voiceover. Some of these things that I mean, it has been kind of disappointing lately. So I really hope that Apple can up their games a little bit and so on. And
Yeah, I agree. Guys, thank you so much for coming on, sharing the news and sharing the story as well. It makes us all feel more comfortable knowing that AppleVis is around. Makes us all feel settled again, so that is good. And I just want to thank you guys for what you're doing, and I wish you all the best with all of it. And come back soon and share more. Brian Bashan and Hans-Jürgen Weiberg, always welcome here on Double Tap. Thank you, guys.
And thank you for having us on your premiere.
Yes, I know. Aren't we gorgeous? This is what we look like in real life. Isn't it hideous?
Yeah.
A pleasure, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Brilliant. And thank you so much to the guys for coming on. We really do appreciate it. And great to hear what is happening. Of course, everyone's pleased, Shaun, that AppleVis is safe. So
of course.
That is good news.
Yeah.
I think I'm more excited by the fact that it's going to be there when the new iOS 18 is out, so we can find out about all these bugs. So yeah, definitely checking that out.
It's just reassuring. It's business as usual, but on stronger foundations. I'm happy. Who isn't?
Just like us.
Hey,
sort
there you
of.
go.
Is it the same? I don't know. We'll find out after this video, I guess, and after this show. But yeah, thank you to those of you who've been watching us on YouTube for the very first time. Like and subscribe. I've become one of them.
No.
Oh, I can't believe it. And if you're on the podcast, if you're on AMI Audio, business as usual for sure. Lots of you asking the question, what's going to happen long term? Are you still going to be doing this on the podcast every day? Still on AMI Audio every day? Absolutely. We are not going anywhere. Keep in touch in all the usual ways as well. Yeah, until someone tells us otherwise. We will be back again tomorrow with more. Thank you, Shaun.
Thank you. Bye-bye.